why are Jewish people leaning towards Democrats that want to eradicate them pretty much?
So it's a very important question. Look, here's a lot of Jews are liberal, and a lot of Jews are more liberal than they are serious about their Judaism. Now, I get in a lot of trouble when I say this. Now, there's a difference between Mizrahi and Ashkenazi. There's different and Sephardic Jews. There's different types of Judaism, just like any group has different types. I'm going to say something that Dennis Prager says, and people call me anti-Semitic for saying it, but if Dennis Prager can say it, then I can say it. The great Dennis Prager, friend of mine, legend, which he says that Jews stopped being religiously Jewish and they only became ethnically Jewish, and leftism took the place of Judaism. That is Dennis Prager's contention. And I agree with that, is that a lot of American Jews, they held on to their ethnic identity as Jews, but they stopped being religiously Jewish. Now, when I say that, I get called anti-Semites by Jews all the time. I get like ADL comes after me, and the New York Times. Remember the New York Times wrote a whole story calling me anti-Semitic? But it's not anti-Semitic to say that. And part of the reasons why this happens is that Judaism, or being Jewish, is more than just a religion. And that's what makes it so difficult, is that it's both a religion, a people, and an ethnicity, and also now a nation. You see, so that is where this becomes very different. Now, there's three types of religious Jews. There's Reform, which tend to be very, very liberal. There's Conservative that tend to be more conservative. And then Orthodox, which is very conservative. But Reform or entirely non-practicing Jews care about abortion, LGBT, Marxism, take your pick. Dennis Prager's contention is that Judaism has become leftism because Jews are actually very worldly minded. Marxism, environmentalism, feminism, they all actually were authored by Jews. A lot of Jews that were trying to find other non-religious replacements for their well-intentioned beliefs to make the world a better place. Now, I wouldn't say that Marxism has made the world a better place, but look, Jews are also very urban. They live in big cities, and what are people like in big cities? They tend to be more liberal. And this is this is a huge problem in some ways, because a lot of Jews becoming very liberal will then invite mass migration into their country. Well, the more that you invite mass migration into your country, especially Islamic immigration, you are basically committing civilizational suicide. But this is what's important. Israelis are very different. So Israelis tend to have some Ashkenazi Jews, but Ashkenazi Jews tend to be more in Europe and America, but they have a lot of Mizrahi and Sephardic Jews, and they tend to be very, very conservative. Now, if you meet so for example, when I go walk the streets of New York City, liberal Jews can't stand me. They'll sneer, they'll snicker, oh, I don't like Charlie Kirk. However, if I walk the streets of Jerusalem, Israeli Jews love me. Israeli Jews love that I talk about conservative values and strong borders and strong Western civilization. So it's the same ethnic group, but two completely different worldviews. And
so they're like on two different ends of the spectrum.
Let's put 493 up on screen. I think it's very important. And then I'm going to kind of debunk this whole thing. So the media is saying, well, look at all of these polling that shows that Jews are behind Zohran. Put 493 up. Yeah. So this is NYC Jews who love Zohran Mamdani. I totally believe that some Jews in New York are 100% behind Zohran Mamdani, because some Jews do not take their Judaism seriously. Now, just showing up on screen, these two Jews on the screen with their flag, I'm guessing that they're probably not that observant of Judaism. I could be totally wrong. These could end up being like Orthodox people. They're not dressed like how Orthodox would be. But the less seriously you take Judaism, the more likely you are to be liberal. So apparently the poll that was showing the Jewish support of Mamdani also came from a Mamdani campaign advisor. But I don't think that Jews should be overly defensive about the idea that some Jews are voting for Mamdani. Of course they are, because Judaism as a religion has become less attached with the ethnicity of being a Jew. So what is the solution? Make Jews more serious about their Judaism. Believe in God, not in government. Care about what the Torah has to say a lot more than the New York Times. Here is a very important question. If you go to the Upper East Side of Manhattan and you ask a Jewish family, where do you give more credence? To the New York Times or to the Torah? And if they say the New York Times, they're probably a liberal. A lot of liberal Jews also have never actually visited Israel. They've read about Israel, but visiting Israel for a Jew should be a very, very holy experience. Again, this is the Newsweek article. It says, Mamdani scores a 17-point lead with Jewish voters in the New York City race. Now, again, that's from a Mamdani campaign operative. So I find that to be a little bit, asterisk on it. But that's not impossible. That's not an impossible piece of data because so many Jews have become left-wing. That is from Zenith Research and Public Progress Solutions. Mamdani, though, he wants to globalize the Intifada, which is let's go bring Jew hate to New York City. Mamdani wants to arrest the prime minister of Israel. Look, I got plenty of disagreements. I got plenty of problems with Netanyahu. He shouldn't be arrested if he comes to New York City. Mamdani wants to sanction the state of Israel, and you still have Jews that support him. Of course, I would totally believe that. I would believe that amongst some Jews, they would do that. Now, the numbers will bear it out. And he thinks Jews are white, and he wants to tax whiter neighborhoods. Taking a step back, and let's emphasize another key component here, which is leftism will fill the life of a secular people. And this is where I think it needs to be broadened, Anthony. It's not just that Jews have become more liberal, the less religious. Christians become more liberal, the less religious they are. It fills an existential void. And Catholics, yes. So it is important to, you want to do so many Jews, but let's just broaden it. Any monotheistic faith that becomes less religious and more secular, they become more liberal.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.